Great. Thanks, Anna. And thanks everyone for participating with us. We look forward to additional feedback throughout. And so I'm excited to introduce our county manager who's going to offer some opening remarks before we get into tonight's content. County manager, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Director Prishak. Hi, I am John Fournier. As said, I am the county manager. Thank you all for joining us virtually tonight. I am very excited to be here as we continue to talk about our climate action plan. It's an issue that is very near and dear to my heart and the county executive's heart. And we're excited about the progress that we have made. From the very beginning of this process, we have envisioned a plan that is both ambitious and achievable. We want a plan that sets a high bar, that with effort and investment and a lot of hard work, we can clear. So, what does that mean? We know that this is a a collective action problem. Everyone globally must do their part. And the only way to achieve change with a collective action problem is when everyone individually decides to do their part. And so we must decide to do our part, to think about the most important things that we can achieve and to run at them. We want to be ambitious, we want to think big, and we want to make sure that we have a plan that will be a success when all is said and done. So, with that in mind, there are things that we know. We know that the climate is changing and getting hotter. We know it is getting wetter. We know that weather is getting more extreme. And we know that this is likely caused by human activity. We know these things. And yet, on a day to day basis, most people know these things to be true, but we pretend that they aren't. We continue to do business as usual, and we can no longer afford to do that. And with this plan, we want to cut through the cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of knowing that our thoughts and our actions do not line up with each other. And so we're going to do something bold for the climate. I want you to think about that as we discuss the plan tonight. I know there are people here with competing visions and values, and we want to hear from you about what your thoughts are. But at the end of the day, we're committed to administering an ambitious climate action plan. And I want to thank Director Prishak and her team and our consultants for their leadership and their hard work to bring this plan to the public and hopefully bring it to a conclusion and to fruition. So thank you all for being here today. Thanks for caring. Thanks for speaking. Thanks for showing your commitment to the county. And let's do something good for our neighbors and for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, county manager. Excellent words. So I want to do a quick thank you to my staff, the county's Department of Sustainability. We're about 2 years officially old here in 2023. And so I'm sorry. And so I want to just have my team do a quick wave, and that'll let us introduce. And I apologize, it sounds like there might be an issue with the chat. Give us a little bit of grace with some technology here. Apologies for that. So, our team has been amazing. We are a small but mighty team and excited to keep working on this climate action plan and all of the work and continuing to engage with all of you. I'd like to identify our team of amazing consultants as part of this climate action plan. We have a amazing team of 5. So ICF Consultants has been supporting us in the lead on this climate action plan, along with Evolve EA, Black Girl Green World. Allen and Sharif is an engineering firm that has been supporting county operational climate action. And then Notoria Marketing and Design Solutions will be helping with the finalization of our plan, and they have been amazing. And if they want to give a quick wave for those who are on camera, thank you guys for your amazing work. So let's get into the meat of tonight's presentation. Why climate action now? As our county manager mentioned, Climate change is happening. We know it's happening. And the window for meaningful change is closing for us. We want to ensure that we can reduce emissions to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, essentially mitigation efforts. But we're already seeing the impacts of climate change, and we need to be prepared. We need to think about adaptation and resiliency opportunities to make sure that we are able to handle those changes. This is a regional vision and an opportunity for us as a community to have a voice around climate action. We have had many climate action plans across the county, and we're excited to align all of them together under sort of this regional county climate action planning vision. A quick thank you to some of the additional partners that is supporting this work. The Carnegie Museum of Natural History on tonight are also supporting us in this work. Global Wordsmith staff are here as our interpreters. We thank them for their help. We have two key stakeholder groups, our technical advisory group, as well as our climate working group, and we thank you for your work along this process. And as many of you hopefully know, there will be door prizes selected, and so these are some of our sponsors of the door prizes. We will follow up in an email to those who are selected as door prize winners after the meeting. So keep an eye on the email that you use to register this evening. Our agenda tonight is a quick introduction and overview of the plan. I'll talk about the vision and the values and the goals that we've crafted so far that included all of your feedback, as well as the schedule for the plan, the next steps, and where we're headed. We'll do a deep dive into the sectors. There are 7 sectors within the plan, and we'll talk about some of the strategies that we have identified and get your feedback on prioritization and important benefits to consider. We'll have Alyssa Lyons leading us an environmental justice commitment conversation. I'm excited to hear your feedback and have you help us craft an environmental justice commitment statement to include in the climate action plan. And then we'll have a question and answer session towards the end. So just to ground us all in where we are in Allegheny County, which is home to 1.25 million people. We have over 100 and we have 130 municipalities, so individual separate systems of government, of local government. There are 7 elected offices for Allegheny County as a government agency. We have the county executive, county council, district attorneys, treasurers, controllers, court of common pleas, and our sheriff's office. And then there are 21 executive branches, 21 departments within the executive branch of the county executive, so underneath the administration. Within Allegheny or within Pennsylvania, there are 3 levels of government that we consider as we think about policy and climate action. We have state level, county level, and local. And each one has their own levers that they can pull to influence and make change. And our goal is to identify the many of those that can be here. Some of you may realize, but the county is also updating the county comprehensive plan, which is Allegheny Forward. And so as we create these 2 plans together, the climate action plan and our comprehensive plan, we want to make sure that they are aligned. So the Climate Action Plan is a community benefits forward approach to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and it's broken into the 7 sectors listed. Our comprehensive plan is a guide for growth and investment meant to align infrastructure, land use, housing, and economic development opportunities. And these are some of the key issues that have been identified as part of that planning process. Throughout the planning process, since both of us kicked off this efforts last year, we are ensuring that there is alignment both across the county departments, but then in the feedback and the engagement that we're having and how we're incorporating that engagement and feedback into the plans. And so these will be aligned as they come together. Quick overview of our climate action plan. We'll start with kind of the basics. A climate action plan, it's a detailed roadmap that's used by cities, counties, or organizations to help reduce harmful greenhouse gas emissions and improve their communities. These plans include specific actions that reduce those emissions, who will implement them, and helps us set clear goals and milestones along the way. And so these are all pieces of our climate action plan. So what will it look like for us? As we've mentioned, there's a lot of climate action work that has happened in our community. And instead of recreating the wheel, the goal is to align all of those efforts. Many of you have participated in some of those processes, and we don't want that feedback to be ignored. It will be incorporated into our process. And this plan itself is focusing not just on reducing those carbon emissions, but improving qualities of life. And so this is considered a community benefits forward plan. And there's three big components that are helping us to frame that plan that I'll walk through next. We'll have a vision, values, and goals. These are those guiding principles that create the foundation of our plan. We've created a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. This is the data, the accounting, and the metrics of how of the pollution that is generated here in Allegheny County. And then it will include our strategies and actions. And so this is a sector-based actions, projects, policies that are used for making community improvements to help us meet our overall climate goal, but aligns with our values as well. And so this vision, values, and goals, we actually were able to pull a lot of amazing feedback from residents and stakeholders starting last summer when we had our summer of engagement. And you all helped us to kind of craft these messages. So our vision for this climate action plan is an Allegheny County where all people thrive and have a healthy environment because we take climate action together for our neighbors and for future generations. We've identified three foundational values. These were elevated to us to be important, not just about reducing emissions, but also thinking about resiliency and that quality of life. And so equity and inclusion, healthy communities and environment, and economic opportunity will help us start to prioritize and identify the best ways to move this plan forward. For our goal, we have a qualitative and a quantitative goal. Our qualitative goal is that Allegheny County has healthy communities and a healthy environment, as well as affordable energy, convenient transportation, quality housing, and economic opportunity. And our quantitative goal is that we are aiming for carbon neutrality by 2050, and that is community-wide as well as for county operations. And so this is for the geographical space of Allegheny County. So we'll dig a little bit into the data. Just a reminder or some information to make sure everyone's on the same page. Greenhouse gases are invisible gases that are released into the air. This happens when we burn fossil fuels. And this takes place when we do things like driving cars, heating our homes, generating electricity. These emissions are harmful, and the more we put into the atmosphere, the more our climate will change, which can lead to serious problems. And so, as part of these processes of creating climate action plans, we have to inventory those emissions that are caused or generated within Allegheny County as a geographical space. Our inventory measures and tracks the greenhouse gases generated by our specific community and identifies and quantifies those sources of the emissions so we know where they're coming from. It's an important part of a climate action plan because it helps us to determine where we can focus our efforts. I'm hoping many of you saw this last fall. We continue to refine our emissions inventory, making sure that we're not missing any sources and we're not duplicating efforts. So the numbers might seem a little bit different, but the idea is we want to be as close as possible and make sure, again, we're not duplicating numbers or missing numbers. In 2024, Allegheny County created just under 22 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent based on these different categories. This number, to help you picture it, because that's such a large number, this is equivalent if we had 5 million gasoline-powered passenger vehicles driving on the road for a single year. Keep in mind, we have 1.23 million people living in Allegheny County, and so almost 3 times that number of vehicles driving for a year is how many emissions come from our communities. It's also the same emissions that comes from about 9.5 million homes, electricity consumption in a single year. And so you can look at this graph here, and this breaks it into some of the main categories that help us identify our sectors. Industry is a significant portion, about 35% This is both the buildings of our industrial partners as well as the processes that they are doing in those buildings. Our commercial buildings and residential buildings make up another 30% or so another third. Transportation, which covers passenger vehicles, our transit, our on-road and off-road vehicles, and aviation, it's about 19%. Waste is about 4%. And then we have a category of other emissions that can't be categorized into these easy categories, and that's another 4%. Hopefully this one loads, and I'll kick it back to Anna for a quick break and question for y'all.
Yeah, so just one question for you. We'd like you to provide one word to describe why you are interested in climate action. So you heard a little bit from the county manager and from Brittany about why this is important to the county, but we're curious, what interested you in joining us tonight and why you're interested in this topic. So I see some folks have already included some answers. That's great. You can, if you're just joining us now for the first time and you missed the icebreaker, you can scan the QR code with your phone or join us at menti.com and enter the code to answer the questions. I'll also remind you, if you have questions about what you've heard so far tonight, please feel free to put those in the chat. Or if you want to expand upon your answer, if one word is just not enough, please put your thoughts in the chat. We would love to hear your thoughts on this content. I can see in the background we're getting some more answers. It's just taking a few minutes here to load. So we'll give that a moment. Brittany, I'm not sure if we have to press refresh or if it'll go on its own. We'll see.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to see if there's a refresh.
No worries.
Oop,
There we
did that
go.
work?
We had a lot come in at once here. So this is a word cloud. So words that receive multiple contributions. Many people included the same word. Those words will be bigger than the others. And you can see here we've got health front and center. A lot of people who wrote health and public health. We've got community, stewardship, children. I know I saw a daughter and future generations in here earlier, as well as someone in the chat wrote grandchildren. Survival, resilience, future, compassion. Lot of great words here. And again, interested to see how these words relate to some of the strategies that you're going to hear more about later on in the presentation here. I know we're getting a few more answers, but Brittany, I may pass it back to you to keep us moving.
Sounds great. And thank you everyone for your patience as we test out lovely technology. All right, so I'm going to move into an overview of kind of how the framework of this plan is before we dive deeper into the specific strategies and actions that we've identified. And so the Climate Action Plan, as I've mentioned before, there are 7 sectors. These essentially are parts of the county that produce carbon emissions through different types of activities. And so there are 7 of them: buildings and infrastructure, electricity grid, transportation, industry and fuels, waste and resource use, natural systems, and food and water. Within each of these sectors are strategies. There are 29 total strategies across the plan, and these are broad sets of work that contain the specific actions that together help us reduce those carbon emissions and also support and create community benefits. And so, for example, within our transportation sector, there are 6 specific strategies. And then within each of these strategies, there are actions. There's over 180 actions across the entire plan. These actions are plans, policies, programs, or projects that help contribute to progress within those strategies. So for example, Within transportation sector, we're looking at increasing public transit use. Here are a number of strategies or actions that we are including in the plan that will help us succeed in increasing public transit use. And this is how the plan is set up for each of the sectors. As the county manager mentioned, we're looking for an ambitious and achievable plan. And so how will we achieve this? We wanted to take the opportunity to review the schedule with everyone. So we kicked off this process last May and headed into a summer of engagement to help us create our vision and values, as well as our goals, and start identifying those plan categories. And so thank you all for everyone who participated and helped us pull that together. Last fall, we moved into the inventory process. We created a community-wide carbon emissions inventory, as well as a county operations emissions inventory, and then started to develop our operational assessment for the county itself. At the beginning of this year, we moved into our measures and strategies, where we're developing and drafting those strategies and actions and starting to work through prioritization. And so that's where we are now. And so part of this public meeting, as well as some additional community meetings that we're planning to attend through the end of July, we'll continue to refine those strategies and actions and really start to think through prioritization. Our last phase will kick off here at the end of the summer, where we'll have a drafted plan for review at the end of August with our stakeholders and making sure we have the right content, the right strategies, the right language. And then we'll be excited to provide a final plan by the end of November and start kicking off the community celebration, moving us from planning to implementation. And we hope you'll continue with us throughout that journey. Some highlights from our engagement effort thus far. From April, Mayish of last year through this May, we have directly engaged with over 3,300 people across Allegheny County, across 142 different events. We formed 2 steering committees that have each met 3 times. That's our climate working group, which is a group of about 55 different organizations that work either in the sort of climate and environmental spaces or with frontline community groups. We also have a technical advisory group, which is made up of county departments and authorities and county leadership. This is our internal steering committee and is the same steering committee for the comprehensive plan to continue that alignment that I've already mentioned. We held 4 public meetings this last fall, and then we just held our in-person meeting earlier this year or earlier this month, and now our virtual meeting. And then we'll continue to engage in community events throughout the summer. We also created and hosted 9 focus groups looking at specific sectors, digging into the details with key stakeholders who operate in those sectors to really make sure that we are identifying those strategies and actions that are going to help us succeed. So for the next couple of months, as I mentioned, we've hosted 2 public meetings, this one and one earlier this month in person, and we're attending at least 15 community pop-up engagement events. And if you check out our engagement website, which we'll link again at the end of the presentation, you can follow us and maybe stop by and continue to provide feedback. You'll also have the opportunity beyond tonight to provide feedback in a survey online through that engagement website as well. So many ways that you can continue to share your feedback. So now we're going to jump into those strategies and again, give us some patience as we go through the Miro. And this is the heavier content piece of tonight's presentation. A couple of questions we want you to keep in mind before I turn it over to Sarah to kick us off with our first strategy is continue to share in the Zoom chat. Let us know what questions you have as we go through these scenarios, through these strategies. We also are looking for you to help us elevate the work that is already going. There are great models out there in our communities, and we want to know who they are and what they're doing so we can amplify them and connect them with other communities as models throughout this process. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and let her jump into our first sector.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brittany. So to get us started off here, we've created these scenarios to help, like these are real life scenarios that we've encountered throughout our community engagement. And so we've created these to help illustrate kind of share some of the scenarios we've heard about and how we're excited to, how the climate action plan will bring benefits to this. So these are examples, but they are real life. So I will start here with buildings and built infrastructure, which is our first sector in the climate action plan. Our example person is a homeowner in Penn Hills, and their scenario, this is what they would say is, my house was built in 1950s. I like it a lot, and the neighborhood too, but it's so drafty and my heating and cooling bills are getting so high. I would love to make some improvements, but I think they're expensive and I don't know much about what things I should do next. So here are some example benefits for this homeowner in Penn Hills. We see the opportunity to reduce utility bills, for example, and bring a variety of other benefits through the climate action plan. So some examples that we see include potentially rebates and education programs to support home retrofits. This will allow easier installation of new windows, insulation or heat pump heating and cooling system, or even replacing a gas stove with an induction stove. And ultimately, this will support a more comfortable home, improving indoor air quality and saving money in the long run. Reminder to please, thank you, Cheryl, to add any questions to the chat and/or make sure to lift up great organizations doing this work. Cheryl mentioned Penn Future and Conservations of PA, doing great organizations in this kind of space. And so this is how we attend to, these are some of the strategies, these are the strategies we've developed to support the buildings and built infrastructure sectors. So by 2020, we will ensure new buildings are highly efficient, low carbon, resilient, and net zero ready. We will retrofit housing for energy efficiency, resiliency, and decarbonization. We will also retrofit commercial buildings for energy efficiency, resiliency, and decarbonization, and we will also work hard to make sure that we're adapting buildings to climate change.
Sorry.
The Mentimeter's fighting with us. Apologize.
Great. Well, as part of each of these sectors, as was mentioned earlier, we do have a question for you. We're thinking a lot about what are the benefits that Allegheny County residents will see once the climate action plan is being implemented. And so we'd like to hear from you which benefits you believe are most important that you would most like to see in your neighborhood. So we've got 4 options here. I believe you can put them in ranking order, so you can rank them from most important to least important to you. And so your 4 benefit option.
Anna, sorry.
Vote. Sorry, thank you. I'm sorry about that. So you get to vote on the one that's most important to you. So your options here are you'd like to see energy efficiency that saves residents money on their utility bills, investing in renovating our aging building stock and creating jobs in the trades, improving quality of life through better living and working conditions in renovated buildings, and electrification of gas appliances, which would make indoor air quality much healthier. So curious to know which of these is most important to you. But also feel free to tell us if there are benefits that you're not seeing on this list that you would like to see coming out of the climate action plan. You can put that in the chat. Also, as was mentioned earlier, if you have questions or if you have comments or know organizations who are doing great work around this sector, we want to hear about it. So please put those questions, those thoughts in the chat for us. All right, we see some answers coming in here. It's like so far most popular is energy efficiency, saving money on utility bills, but we've got a lot of votes across the board here. Second most is renovating the aging building stock and creating jobs. then electrification and healthier indoor air quality, which just flipped, so I spoke too early on that one. But this is great. We appreciate this. And I see there are some thoughts in the chat here as well. Take a look here. Improvements in water management to reduce landslides. Yep, and I think that we'll address that a little bit more in one of the other sectors. I appreciate you sharing that thought. Red Tail Resilience Network. Great, that's good to know. Excellent. Thank you. Keep putting those thoughts in the chat. So again, here are the benefits that were mentioned on the poll. And again, let us know if there are any benefits that are missing from this list that you would like to see. All right, Sarah, I'll pass it back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anna. We're getting some good chat activity, so great to know that that's working well. Some of the messages are coming only to the hosts and panelists, so if you feel compelled to share with everyone, please go for it. Okay, so next, our second sector in the Climate Action Plan is electricity grid. We've heard a lot about this. We kicked off the planning process right around the April 2025 storm, for example. We got a lot of, hot topic. So our example scenario is a row house owner in Lawrenceville. And, their story is that their electric bill has gotten a lot higher in the last few years. And with all of the power outages, it also might be nice to have backup power too. Their neighbor put solar panels on their roof last year, and now they're thinking about it too. But it's really expensive up front, even though it would save a lot of money in the long run, especially if they're, are able to get the electric vehicle they've been thinking about. And so then some of the cap benefits for the row house owner in Lawrenceville, and many other folks in similar scenarios are that, we're looking to be able to provide increased financial support for homeowners, support to install rooftop solar arrays and backup batteries, increases affordable, clean, and reliable power, and makes homes more resilient in the case of power outages. Reminder, lots of good stuff coming in on the chat, so thank you. And I want to highlight that since this is a community-wide plan, we're really excited to partner with a variety of amazing, local, state, and regional partners, both, private and public. So there's a lot of opportunities here where the county doesn't necessarily can't do this work. We're going to partner with those folks to do the work. So by 2050, in the electricity grid, our goals are to transition to carbon-free electricity generation, increase resiliency of the electricity systems and grid, deploy solar, deploy battery, microgrid, and other DER systems, support data centers being built sustainably, and then decarbonize district energy systems. I'm going to move into the benefits discussion here.
All right, excellent. So we've got another question here for you about what benefits you would like to see in your neighborhood around the electricity grid sector that Sarah had walked us through. So we've got three options here. Reduce air pollution from power plants. I have seen some discussion about that in the chat, so good to see that here. Protect vulnerable residents from loss of heating and cooling or critical medical equipment during power outages. And grid resilience that prevents power outages. So curious to hear which are most important, as well as what questions you have or organizations who are doing this work. I did see a comment in the chat asking about how the county's going to influence policy and such around microgrids. And so I know, Sarah, you'd mentioned microgrids as one of the strategies. Perhaps we can talk a little bit more about that during the Q&A as well. All right, see some more comments coming in here. Increase affordable residential solar grids. There were a few comments around interest in solar arrays and how to reduce barriers there. Protecting water supply around sustainable data centers. I know that's a question we can perhaps again discuss in the question and answer. Access to charging for electric vehicles, especially for those without garages or parking on their properties. Good to see some comments, additional benefits, and some questions in here. And I think our slide is still waiting to update because I see some thoughts in the back. There we go. So great. Yes, a lot of votes here across the board. Currently grid resilience that prevents power outages winning out, but it is a small margin here.
Does that look like it's mostly updated, Anna?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, so feel free to keep answering the question, but we will move on to the next one here. These are the benefits that you saw in the Menti. And again, let us know what additional benefits you'd like to see. And I'll pass it back to Sarah.
Wonderful. Thank you. And so I also want to acknowledge one note that just came in and is that, there's a lot of information to process and think through. We've put a lot of work into figuring out the best way to communicate it and also recognize that it's a lot to take in and respond to. So I want to make sure that folks know that there's a survey online. We will be at those 15 pop-up engagement events. We'll be also posting a recording in English, Spanish, and ASL. Okay, so our third sector for the climate action plan is transportation. This is also one we've heard a lot. Well, we've heard a lot about all of these. That's why they're sectors. They're important sources of GHG emissions. So here we have a transit commuter in the South Hills, and they take the bus to work, and their daily commute takes about 2 hours. They live on a busy street with lots of traffic, which is convenient, but it's noisy and smells bad.
All right, Sarah, this is the one that takes a little bit to load the page. There it goes.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, so some of the benefits potentially for this transit commuter in the South Hills include improved transit service and more electric vehicles and buses, shorter commute times, and quieter streets and improved air quality. These are some of the benefits we see. Reminder to please, continue to use the chat to tell us great groups doing this work, or also your questions. All right, I think we're good when that slide agrees. Perfect. And so then these are the strategies some of the strategies we put together to achieve our 2050 goals, which include increasing walkability, bikeability, and micromobility, pursue placemaking and efficient land use, increase public transit use, manage congestion, electrify light-duty vehicles, and decarbonize medium and heavy-duty vehicles.
All right, so we're curious again to hear your thoughts on the most important benefits of improving transportation through this climate action plan. So we have 4 options here. Increasing public charging that makes electric vehicle ownership more viable, saving residents money on fuel. This can also address those who cannot accommodate electric vehicle charging at their homes, but have other places to go to charge those vehicles. We also have better biking and walking infrastructure, which can lower the number of cars on the road, reducing pollution and congestion. And then increasing transit, which improves access to essential services, jobs, and education. So curious to hear which of these are most important to you. See some comments here in the chat that it'd be great to have expanded and better public transit in the North Hills. It would also be great to make public transportation free or reducing the cost. A question around plans to expand the light rail system. As well as desire to see public transportation reach the county parks and for green spaces to be considered more essential than they currently are. It'd be great to have better connectivity there. Excellent. Great. Keep putting those thoughts in the chat. And as Sarah said, this meeting is being recorded and more information is posted online. So if you have thoughts after the meeting, would like some time to digest it, this is one opportunity to provide feedback, but definitely not the only opportunity. So please send us your thoughts as you have time to digest the material. Great. So here are those benefits again, and let us know what benefits are missing. And I'll pass it back to the county.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. We're going to move on to industries and fuels with another scenario. This is a high school student in Tarentum. And they said, I'm about to start my senior year, so I'm starting to think about what I'm going to do after graduation. It's hard to know what kinds of jobs are going to be out there for me, but I really like working with my hands. So ideally, I'd like a career where I can get to actually build things. And what are the potential CAP benefits that they may see? An increased investment in clean tech training programs means that the next generation of workers will have educational opportunities that line up with jobs available here in the region. By training our workforce to meet the needs of a changing energy economy, we make sure that Allegheny County workers have skills that will be in demand for a long time to come. And here we have another scenario under our industries and fuels. And this one is from a Mon Valley resident. And this person said, I live 2 miles from a large industrial plant and can definitely smell the air pollution. My daughter has asthma, and I worry that our neighborhood might be the reason. But all our family and support systems are here, and it would be so expensive to move. As we think more about it, there aren't a lot of businesses here or activities for my daughter. So what are the potential CAP benefits? This would be as steel making shifts towards less carbon intensive and less locally polluting technologies, the cleaner air could mean their daughter has fewer trips to the doctor and more businesses begin to open on the main street. And as we said, you can put your questions in the chat, as we've been saying, and make sure you share any organizations or communities that you know that are already doing this work. But here are some specific strategies within the industries and fuel sector that will be part of the plan. By 2050, we will decarbonize existing industrial processes, deploy carbon-free hydrogen and biomethane, accelerate replacement of gas pipelines, support clean tech, circular economy, and green manufacturing, and address abandoned and orphaned wells. I'll pass it to Anna to that mentee.
All right, so hopefully you all know what's coming here. A question about what benefits are most important to you. And I know there has already been some conversation around industrial pollution in the chat. So curious to hear more thoughts about that and which of these benefits are most important to you. So the options we have here are improved health and quality of life impacts for communities close to industrial operations, future-proofing regional economic engines by aligning them with clean energy goals, creating jobs through investment in the deployment of new technologies, and improved air quality due to reduced pollution. So several options here. And then just taking a look here at some of the comments in the chat. There's a comment about the need for better transportation for Pittsburgh school children. A question around the role of the county in making change, given that there are so many municipalities in local government, and how to push for advocacy for code reform in Harrisburg. And so maybe that's a question we can discuss in a little bit more depth during the Q&A here. Desire for more wind and solar on public buildings and large parking lots. Yep, and a comment here around U.S. Steel and the hot strip mill. This is good. A lot of good comments here. Appreciate these comments, and Alexis, thank you for leaving your contact information here as well. So this is helpful. Thank you. And yep, a question for the county around the industrial pollution violation. So that's another thing we can discuss during the Q&A here. All right, great. I think I see there's the Menti response is starting to slow down. Once again, no surprise, a lot of we've got votes across the board, but it looks like the top one is improved health and quality of life for communities close to industrial operations. Not surprised to see that given how big health was in that earlier question we had around why climate action is important to the folks on this call. Oh, and I do just want to acknowledge real quick before we keep going, when you put a chat in the chat box, you have the option to make it visible to everyone or visible just to the hosts and panelists. So we encourage you, if you feel comfortable, feel free to post that comment to everybody. But if you want to send a message just directly to the county, feel free to filter that to hosts and panelists. All right, so Abby, I will pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Yana. So next we're going to go into the our waste and resource use sector. Okay, our example scenario here is from a retiree living in Allegheny Valley. This person said, care about the environment, so I try to do what I can to make a difference. My township doesn't have curbside recycling pickup, so I take it to Harrison Hills Park to drop off to the drop-off site. I'd like to compost more, but I can only put certain kinds of things in my backyard compost bin. So a lot of food just has to go in the trash. So what are some potential benefits that this retiree living in Allegheny Valley might see? As municipalities work together to ensure everyone has curbside recycling, she doesn't have to drive to the county park to recycle anymore. And a weekly compost drop-off program at the farmer's market means she's throwing away less food in the trash. By recycling and composting more than throw away and reducing the amount of plastic in the environment, communities will create less waste overall and create a sense of neighborhood pride. And some of the oh, they're there. So some of the specific strategies we have around waste and resources use are to reduce waste, obviously, improve the management of our waste, and implement composting programs. We have some comments about commercial composting.
All right. We've got another benefits question here for you. So the benefits here under waste and resource use are save money through less purchase and waste of disposable goods, greater access to fresh, local, and healthy foods, support local businesses that operate sustainably and contribute to the local economy, and to save residents time by collecting recycling and compost at or close to their homes. Great. Yep, and then Abby already mentioned one of the comments here around commercial composting. A campaign to inform people that trash and waste goes in our toilets and rivers will, oops, sorry, jumping around here. That will end up back in our water sources. We have a question about why 2050 was selected as the goal year for carbon neutrality, and if we can move that sooner. Comment that urban farms and gardens would greatly benefit from compost. Reducing single-use plastics. not buying things wrapped in plastic to reduce garbage. Great, good comments here. I think we've still got some voting going on here for the benefits. Yep, and alternatives for frozen foods that are mostly wrapped in plastic containers. All right, great. Looks like we've got a lot of votes here for supporting local businesses that operate sustainably, contribute to the local economy, as well as a lot of votes for the other categories as well. I think the voting's starting to slow down. So Abby, I'll pass it back to you. This is again our list of benefits from the previous slide.
And I think now I'm gonna pass it back to Brittany.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. And I appreciate for those who have still sticking with us. We have two more sectors to go through, and then I'm excited to get into the environmental justice commitment conversation that Alyssa's going to lead us in. And we're going to do our best to potentially unmute folks when we get to that point. And so I ask for a little bit of patience. So this is our natural systems sector. And in this scenario, we have a Rivertown resident. For them, almost any time it rains, our basement gets wet. And a few times recently, our street got completely flooded. It seems like that's happening more and more these days. And so for this resident, some of the benefits that we're hoping to implement as part of the Climate Action Plan is increased green stormwater infrastructure. With an increase in the deployment of green stormwater infrastructure, this reduces stormwater runoff and helps sequester greenhouse gas emissions. Residents in low-lying areas will see fewer issues with flooding in their homes. It's just one of the many benefits we're hoping to see. Within the natural systems sector, these are the three large strategies. By 2050, we will support nature-based solutions, integrate people, community, and the environment, and manage land and forest for natural sequestration. And as others have mentioned, please continue to feel free to add things into the chat. I do see some comments around kind of commercial substitutes from plastics, some thoughts from our waste and resource section. Practice fixing and refurbishing and mending in school, a new school lesson. I like that. I'm gonna start our next Menti and kick it back to Anna.
All righty. You may have predicted this one is about benefits in the natural systems sector. So the benefits we have here are reduced flooding, increased green space, beautification and reuse of vacant land, and improved recreational opportunities. Know there were some comments in the chat earlier about increasing green space, as well as increasing our access to the county's parks through public transportation. So curious to hear additional thoughts around natural systems, benefits, organizations that are working in this space, and general thoughts about the natural systems sector. Yep, and building on what Brittany was saying earlier, there are some comments here about changing our mindset to a sustainable mindset instead of a disposable mindset. Improving water management systems. A note here, climate change is expensive in ways that people don't count as climate change. So thinking a little bit differently about how we're approaching this work. Green nature-based stormwater management to slow down and keep water in the upper watersheds. How do we absorb more of that stormwater, reduce flooding? Right, and it does look like reduced flooding is getting a lot of votes here on the Mentee, as well as beautification and reuse of vacant land. We've had some great conversations at our last community meeting around approaches to vacant land across the county and how that can intersect with the climate action plan. All right, looks like our voting's starting to slow down here. So, Brittany, I will pass it back to you for our last sector.
Sounds great. Thanks, Anna. And as always, please continue to add that information in the chat. We will be saving the chat and being able to collect everyone's feedback. So this is our last sector within the Climate Action Plan, food and water. And so this is one of our example scenarios. A small farm owner in Findlay Township. I love the lifestyle of cultivating the land and providing food for my community. We're not a big industrial farm, but we're local, and we contribute to the economy and sense of place here in Allegheny County. Unfortunately, it's getting harder and harder to make finances work for a small farm. This is some of the benefits that we're hoping to see for this small farmer. We're looking to support local sustainable agricultural practices, and therefore more support for those kinds of practices will help Allegheny County farmers continue to produce local food that doesn't have to travel far to get to county residents. Preserving farmland will limit urban sprawl, and best practices in sustainable farming will increase carbon sequestration and reduce the reliance on unhealthy chemicals and pesticides. This is just one of the many benefits and strategies within the food and water sector. And so here are the 5 strategies we've identified within this sector. And so by 2050, we will support agriculture across urban, suburban, and rural landscapes, implement sustainable agricultural practices, reduce flooding and improve water quality, decarbonize water and sewer services, and champion food justice and increase food access across Allegheny County. And so our last mentee of the evening, I'll kick this back to Anna.
All right, great. So yes, curious to hear thoughts around the benefits associated with food and water. This will load here in a moment. All right. So benefits we have here are supporting an economy of sustainable local food production, clean rivers, streams, and lakes for recreation, reduced food insecurity and food deserts, and better access to fresh, healthy foods, and safe drinking water for residents. So curious to hear preferences and your thoughts on these 4 options. We do have some more comments here in the chat around more rain gardens and fewer lawns related to natural systems. Comment around the county having a vacant land policy that could require significant sustainable performance, especially large brownfield sites. I think that relates to the next comment, which is a question around whether brownfield redevelopment strategies are part of this plan, and the kind of opportunities that could exist there. So another thing that perhaps we can discuss a bit about, and I believe is also addressed as part of the county's, is being addressed as part of the county's comprehensive plan. A comment around limiting fracking to maintain health and healthy farmers. Yep. And a comment or a question here around the outreach and education and support of the plan that we are the choir. And how are we going to track success, and what are the future steps for this plan? So all great questions that we'll note here for Q&A. Question here around including water in this section might need a little bit of rethinking here. Great. All good questions. While you're including your final answers here, I know we've given this reminder a couple times, but this meeting will be recorded and posted on the website. There's also a lot of other information on the website, so feel free to take some time, dig into it, answer the survey. and send us a note later on after you've had more time to really kind of think and reflect on this material. We know we threw a lot at you in this section, so we appreciate your patience and sticking with us through these 7 sectors. So great. But yep, again, listing the food and water benefits here. All right. And then, so this takes us into the last chapter, the last section of our meeting today. Alyssa is going to talk us through how we're growing Allegheny County's environmental justice commitment and specific to this plan, and looking forward to hearing thoughts and having a conversation. So Alyssa, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna and Sustainability Department team. Really appreciate you carrying us thus far. And thank you all participants for being with us throughout the meeting thus far. Like Anna said, it has been a lot of information, and so we do hope you take some opportunity after this meeting, during this meeting, to review the notes and continue to apply to provide some feedback for us, as the climate action is going to only work for all of us, but for y'all mainly as residents. And so this brings us to the environmental justice portion of the climate action plan. And so it is no um, mystery. It is also no secret that Allegheny County has a long history of disproportionately impacted folks that live and dwell and work in the region. And so we're coming up with an environmental justice commitment, hopefully, that will recognize that disproportionate impact throughout the decades of environmental, health, and climate related burdens faced by our marginalized communities. Um, and we can take a stab at how many of which marginalized communities those are. And we can definitely identify those and the role of local government in creating those conditions as well. And so it's important that we stop here and truly acknowledge the historical harm that has been presented to residents because of our past climate action decisions. Additionally, the commitment will seek to address those inequities in our climate action plan and to ensure a fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, especially those that are disproportionately impacted by climate action. And so, why is this important? Well, a lot of the CAP's foundational values include health, healthy communities, economic opportunity, and equity and inclusion, because we do believe that climate action must improve and enhance the quality of life for everyone. And so there are various residents, frontline communities, advocates, and nonprofits who have been working diligently for decades to address environmental injustice across southwestern Pennsylvania. And so we have to ensure that this climate action plan acknowledges and even uplifts and partners and enhances and intensifies the work that they have been doing on the ground for so long. Thank you to the person who brought up the question about which groups exist. Put all the groups that you know in the chat, give them a shout out. Those are our leaders on the ground, in addition to you all who participate in these opportunities to make sure that we have environmental justice across the region. Through the All in Allegheny plan, which is the county's comprehensive plan, Allegheny County has committed to addressing historic inequities and ensuring that the needs of these communities most impacted by pollution are met first. And or prioritized, let's say prioritized, maybe not met first, but definitely prioritized. And so the CAP seeks to strengthen that commitment and will provide pathways to repair past harms. Um, I think it's important that you all attend these meetings so that we can maintain the pragmatism and the reality of past environmental harms. And so your stories, your experiences, the missions that you uphold are important. So it's also important to recognize that historic, systemic, and structural racism helped shape and build the current environment of Allegheny County We cannot escape the reality and the history of the region. And so we need to ensure that the climate action plan is very clear in acknowledging that our built environment and how we got here. In addition to that, we have damage from redlining to citing polluting industries and communities of colors that still persist today. A lot of you asked questions in the chat about regulations and cracking down on polluters. Those are the things and kind of climate actions that must prioritize marginalized communities that show up in this plan. And so let's be honest, climate change exacerbates these injustices. It exacerbates all the isms of racism and sexism and poverty to the extent that you can think of. And we know that these marginalized communities are bearing the disproportionate impacts of heat, flooding that we were talking about, food costs, utility costs, and much, much more. And so throughout the summer, well, we want you all to help us, share your thoughts as we are co-creating this environmental justice commitment. We need to know how past planning decisions have shaped your community. We need to know if you are a member of the Hill District. We need to know if you're a member of the Mon Valley. We need to know if you're a member of even Manchester. All have are places that have experienced extreme environmental injustice. And so we need to know about your experiences, whether you live in Clarendon, what needs to be said in this commitment statement to make it feel true, to make it resonate with you. What solutions do you all envision? What does a healthier and more equitable Allegheny County look like to you? And how do we go about addressing these historical environmental injustices throughout that have happened throughout time to Allegheny County, alongside Allegheny County, to residents and alongside residents. So we want to make sure that we stop here for a moment. I do think this is the point where we'll have a little bit of conversation. So feel free to unmute yourselves or some comments in the chat
I was
and talk
so
to us
folks
about
can't unmute
environment.
themselves. Sorry,
Okay.
Alyssa. We
Okay.
will unmute them. We're going to attempt to do so. So I'm going to ask folks to attempt to raise your hand. You should have a feature here that lets you raise your hand. And if you do so, we'll look for you and try and unmute you one at a time to allow you to provide your feedback. And Sarah, I'm going to ask you to help me find those who are raising their hand to unmute them if you can see them on your end. You also have the opportunity to please add stuff into the chat. Alyssa will be happy to kind of read it out and provide responses as well. So there's those two options. So we'll see how this works and appreciate everyone's patience.
So
Awesome.
right now, I do not see any hands up on my end. I know Sawyer has been able to see that very well throughout the webinar. Sawyer, please pop in if you see hands up.
Thank you for shouting out the Black Appalachian Coalition, 412 Justice, some groups in the region. I think I saw Breathe a little bit earlier, as we wait for some comments to roll in around these questions regarding environmental justice.
Okay, so we received confirmation. No hands are up. Huh, interesting. So yeah, it looks like Beth is sharing that she cannot raise her hand. So Beth, I'm going to unmute you if that's okay, and we'll kick this off. Perhaps the best way to make sure we can unmute you is for you to just let us know that we should unmute you in the chat. Apologies for we made so many improvements. All right, so going for Beth. Here we go. All right, Beth, you should be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Um,
That-
One of the biggest issues that I know of, and it's not my neighborhood, but it's just really important, is what's happening with Nippon Steel. I went to Marin's salon, if you're aware of it, and they had a wonderful session on it. And it became clear to me that there's a huge investment that Nippon Steel is going to be making into the Braddock Steelwork, and they're not going to improve any of the existing process. They're simply going to put on a front end that allows them to do a specific type of rolled steel that's more profitable. And they're also going to be able to do more of it. But that means using the old blast furnaces more, with the terrible pollution that those blast furnaces already create being larger. So the overall impact is going to dramatically increase the pollution burden in the Braddock and Mon Valley area. And I can remember living in South Park. And when there were problems at the Braddock Steelworks, our air wasn't breathable. And South Park is not all that close, really. But and I mean, we had all kinds of trees around us and everything else to filter it out, but it was still a disaster.
Hey, Beth.
So I'm real concerned.
Yes, is in your concern, do you have a question or a comment for us regarding how
How are you going to make
change
sure
the
that
environmental
Nippon
statement?
Steel has to improve and reduce their current pollution, not increase it?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that comment, Beth. We'll try our best to answer that in the chat. Um, I see some other hands raised. Just want to remind you that we are discussing Allegheny County's the CAP's environmental justice commitment statement. So please think about some of the questions. How have past planning decisions shaped your community? What solutions do you envision? And what else can we do to take action against environmental injustice? I do see that Jason has a hand raised. Jason Hallmark.
Yeah, hi, thank you. My name's Jason Hallmark. I work for an organization called the People Over Petro Coalition, small organization, and we help support around 50 frontline and grassroots environmental organizations in the area, um, and and just comment on environmental justice. Um, we're currently working on disability-centered disaster prep information and resources. Living with disability myself, have quickly learned just the disproportionate impact it has. Just climate change has. People with disabilities are impacted significantly more than other groups. And of course, it can intersect with all the other marginalized groups as well. So something that we've been really trying to work on is integrating disability justice into all of our environmental work that we do. The way we look at it, or at least I look at it, people with disabilities have been adapting to a world that wasn't built for them, their whole lives. So not only are we, experts in adaptation, but again, when you plan for uh, the most vulnerable, that automatically catches everybody else. So yeah, just thoughts, just thinking about disability justice and how that can be incorporated into this CAP plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. Really appreciate that. We do hear a lot from our disability justice community folks. Um, and we need to make sure to include everyone in that. And definitely appreciate your advocacy and speaking up. Thanks, Jason. I did see a question in the chat that was up here a little bit further. Is there a way for the county to give reparations slash expanded benefits to community members, families that have lived in Allegheny County the longest and have paid the price for the historic isms? Definitely a question for the county to mull over there. Any other questions or hands that we see raised in the chat? All right.
Catherine, I believe you should be able to come off mute.
Catherine, are you there?
We have a
Catherine and Fred also have their hand raised. And so, Catherine, we can't hear you at the moment. Maybe we can try Fred.
perfect.
Uh, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Fred, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was just going to throw out there that there is a nonprofit called Solar United Neighbors that helps homeowners to get together as a group and purchase solar for discounted rates. And they're starting a new program to do this again in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. And I think the county is going to work with them, and so is Pittsburgh. So if anybody out there is interested in going solar, saving money, generating clean electricity and so forth, I'll put the link in the chat where you can learn more about that.
Thank you so much, Fred. Really appreciate that. And we might have one more time for one more comment. We're going to try Catherine again.
Yeah, I just double checked the settings. It seems like you should be able to unmute Catherine, I hope. On my screen, it's in the bottom left to unmute. Oop.
If anything, Catherine, we definitely encourage you to put your comment in the chat. But Brittany, I think I'm going to kick it back over to you if we or move on to the next slide. Thank you so much, everyone. As you're thinking about environmental justice, please provide some comments. We will be creating a commitment statement. We want to make sure that it's as robust and inclusive, and captures the essence of what a commitment statement should be. Oh, Catherine, you're off mute now.
Yes, I was just going to call your attention. It looked like someone named Claude had their hand raised. I didn't want you to miss their comment. If could you see their hand?
We didn't, Claude doesn't currently have their hand raised, but thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Um, Thank you. Thank you for advocating for Claude, Catherine. That was very sweet. If you're interested in having this conversation, we will be having additional resident leader conversations. You can join us in August 5th at 5:30 p.m. to discuss our environmental and justice commitment statement a little bit further. And I will kick it back to Brittany and Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Really appreciate you walking us through that. And so we are wrapping up here, folks. The hope here is this is our Q&A portion, and I know some of the questions or many of the questions were answered in the chat. I have a couple of questions here that we've highlighted that I'm going to answer now, but if you have additional questions, please continue to add them to the chat. And we will also have an opportunity for you to raise your hand and for us to unmute as well. So I'm going to pull this specific question, and Sarah, let me know if I'm missing anything. So it looks like there was a kind of a couple of questions in the chat similar around which communities in Allegheny County are the most vulnerable to impacts of climate change, as well as questions around are there any places in Allegheny County where access to clean, potable water is at risk? And so we want to acknowledge that we did not complete an vulnerability assessment as part of this climate action plan, but we do recognize that marginalized communities face a disproportionate impact related to climate change. And so part of our process here is developing this environmental justice commitment statement to kind of try and acknowledge and understand how we can prioritize the environmental justice in frontline communities that are more greatly impacted by climate change, especially in Allegheny County. In addition, I do want to share a resource, and I will try and find the link and post it to the chat. If not, we'll post it as a resource on our engagement website. But the county's health department actually created an environmental justice index for Allegheny County that assesses different types of public health and other related impacts that could be facing specific communities more so than others to help understand how our different communities are impacted. And so they assessed those who are more vulnerable to heat impacts and cold impacts. They looked at vector-borne diseases like ticks and mosquitoes, and similar. They looked at air quality, and they looked at age as well as other related factors. And so there is a opportunity for you to take a look at that and see what your community might be facing compared to other communities. And so we'll make sure that we get that resource out there. I see another question here that we may have to follow up on. There was a question about if there is any progress on passing House Bill 1971 to make plug-in solar systems accessible to everyone. And it sounds like this might be related to, I'm sorry, there was a similar question, not quite so specific, about how the county influences policies and regulations on microgrids. Um, I think related to the House Bill 1971, I will have to find out more information and we can follow up and post an update online. I believe there was a similar question around the House bills related to community solar and the county's influence at the state level and ability to advocate at that space. That's one of the things that we're looking to consider and determine as part of this planning opportunity. The county doesn't necessarily control everything, as many folks in the chat have mentioned. Our local municipalities control certain pieces, the state and federal government control others. And so there are opportunities for the county to advocate on our region's behalf for specific new policies. And so that could be making sure that we continue to support community solar, and then we get that legislation passed at the state level and possibly this House bill around plug-in solar systems. And so I think there is a role for the county to be an advocate on the behalf of this region to those state level policies. And as far as how the county influences policies and regulations on microgrids, some of that is at the Public Utility Commission level, which is a state level organization. And so again, I think there's opportunities here for the county to be that advocate. If we know that this is a priority for our region, then we should be talking to those who have the power to make those changes and make sure that our needs are known. There's also opportunities for us to partner with other counties. The more that we know that a lot of the communities across the state want to see some of these regulations, there could be ways for us to band together and really show that that is something that needs to be prioritized at the state level. I'm going to pause before I take the next question and ask if there was any anyone with a hand up that wanted to ask a question. I don't know, Sarah, if you can see some of those hands.
I don't see any hands up right now, Brittany.
Okay.
I was just also eagerly trying to keep up with the questions in the chat.
Yeah, we really do appreciate everyone who has stuck here so far with us. And the chat has been very active. And so thank you so much. Looks like that one might have already been covered. So there was a question here around why such a long range goal of 2050? Can we do more sooner? And to answer that, absolutely. We can definitely do more sooner. So this plan took a long-term view, a 25-year view, because 2050 is the year that many climate action plans are aiming towards for that carbon neutrality. But we intend to make progress well before that. As we go through the plan and we continue to prioritize, we'll start to determine what are short-term goals, medium-term goals, and then those long-term goals so that we can continue to make progress across those 25 years rather than all at the end. And so absolutely we can continue to do more sooner. But 2050 is kind of the science-based goal that a lot of communities are using for carbon neutrality.
Brittany, do we have time for one more?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Tim Kelly, you should be able to unmute. All right. Or you are muted.
Can you hear me?
We
Absolutely.
can.
Yeah, the question I have is how do you intend to promote this plan to raise public awareness at a time when climate hushing, as it's been called, is the order of the day, when the media, business, and politicians are trying to back away from even mentioning climate change?
So that's a great question, Tim. And I think what we've actually recognized is while that may be the position at a federal level, locally, we've been able to really engage well on climate change, both with many of our municipalities as well as the media. They've been helping support the climate action planning process and the residents that we're talking with. So I think promoting the plan, if that's what you're asking for about, we've seen some really interested folks and recognition that this is important locally. And so I'm not sure we'll have the same political concerns locally as we might have from the federal perspective. I don't know if that answers your question, Tim.
Um, I'm not sure. I mean, you said you talked to 3,000 people in the process of this. We're a county of over 1 million people. And here you have a killer El Nino on the way. And I wonder if you were to walk out and start talking to people about, that situation, how many people would actually be aware of anything connected with the climate crisis and the innovation that's being brought to bear to fix it.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Tim. So one of the things we've recognized, and maybe this can lean a little bit towards how we're trying to do engagement, is climate change isn't necessarily the word that folks really understand. They understand the community benefits. They understand increased flooding and how we're going to try and reduce that. And so one of the things we actually have done is we're partnering with the Carnegie Museum of Natural History to help us think about how we talk about climate change so that it resonates more with residents because they can see the direct impacts. And so that way we don't get sort of the glossy-eyed look when you talk about climate change. We can actually start to connect what we're trying to do with direct impacts on our communities. And so that's one of the things we're working on is how to actually talk about climate change and the language we can use to actually make sure that folks really are starting to connect it and how this aligns with a lot of other priorities. While we may have only talked to 3,300 people, that's still a significant number of folks who have directly wanted to talk with us about this climate plan. And there are many others out there that have probably connected with different parts of the plan, but maybe not from a climate change lens. And I think that's why we're also trying to make sure that as the county updates the comprehensive plan, that we're aligning there because there's a lot of organizations that are engaging with the comprehensive plan, especially from the municipal perspective. And there's a lot of alignments there between what we're trying to do with the climate action plan and what we're trying to do through that plan.
I would submit Potential Energy Coalition just released a comprehensive multinational report
Okay,
on research, doing research on what works. You
great.
can find that at potentialenergycoalition.org. They're some of the
Perfect.
best marketers on the planet. They've done the hard work. Yeah, I read through it. It's very good.
Excellent. Thank you for that resource, Tim. We'll definitely take a look at that. I have heard good things about that organization, so thank you.
Thank you, Brittany.
Great. Sarah, do we have other raised hands?
I don't see any other raised hands. Folks, please feel free to raise your hand or drop your question in the chat.
I see a
Ooh, we have a
question in the
good
chat.
Ooh, we have so many good questions. It's hard to know where to start. But like
Yeah,
one
please read.
that just came in was, could the county work with local media on a campaign to increase awareness, such as working with meteorologists?
I love that idea. I think that's definitely something we can consider. We're always looking at ways to make sure we're engaging with folks, and I do like that idea of local media.
We also really want to make sure that even the folks that maybe aren't thinking about climate change as much right now are able to benefit from this plan and shape this plan. And that's another reason why we really want to make sure that we're centering residents and we're like making sure that we're talking about this in a way that is accessible. So turns out, yeah, we're building on those great resources, and at the same time, we're eager to kind of demonstrate that there are win-wins with this, that it can be cost effective, that this doesn't have to cost more, or that'll benefit us in the long run. So we're working to improve the narrative and eager for support in that.
So I have one more question that looks like we pulled out of the chat that I'll answer, and then we might have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap up. So there's a question that was asked, are brownfield redevelopment strategies part of the plan? As a resident of the Allegheny Valley, I feel like many riverfront communities could benefit from responsible redevelopment of former industrial properties, and I'm curious how this could fit into the county's thinking on resilience and environmental justice. And the answer is yes, absolutely. There are several strategies around focusing on where site development is so that we're looking at redevelopment, not new development. And brownfields are in a great place, especially for commercial and industrial development. And so there are opportunities for us to work with economic development, the county's economic development division. They actually have some funding that helps support brownfield as well as through the state brownfield redevelopment. And so, yes, the answer is yes. Really excited to kind of see that as a way to make sure we're not developing new spaces, that we're able to maintain our green spaces and all of those reasons.
Brittany, I was just reminded myself of a couple important, a few others we were hoping you could answer. So
Sure,
out
please.
loud. So 1 second. The answer seems to be lost. It's about how, or the question, I apologize. Oh, okay. Keep thinking about how the county can make change with such fractured local government. Health is the obvious choice to push further reform. Does the county have advocacy for code reform in Harrisburg and developing capacity to electrify large vehicles?
So it's a multi-factor question. So yes, we absolutely recognize that the fractured government here in Allegheny County and even just across Pennsylvania is a barrier to a lot of progress. And so I think one of the things that we've recognized is while there is fractured government, there is opportunity for the county to provide the resources to those municipalities to support consistent implementation of some of the actions within this plan. Part of our fractured government issue is that we have limited municipal capacity to do a lot of this great work. They're trying to keep the roads plowed during snowstorms. They're trying to make sure we pick up the trash. And so, what are some ways that the county can step in and provide that regional, either technical assistance or capacity to help support some implementation to kind of reduce those silos so the municipalities are working together? And I think at the state level, as I had mentioned earlier, we've recognized that the county may not have the authority to implement everything we're hoping to do in this plan, and that there are places where the state has more of that regulatory or policy level ability. And so there is a place for the county to advocate again on behalf of this region for these areas that are priorities for us to make sure that the state takes it seriously and that we can see some good policies that'll help support our implementation. Sarah, did I get all the pieces of that question?
You did. That's great. Thank you. And we'll also, as Brittany mentioned earlier, we're going to be posting an FAQ document. We've tried to be as easy as possible to find as well. So respond to every email, I believe. Yeah.
So I think I see one comment in the chat that came to the hosts and panelists, and I think it's a great question. And then we'll wrap up here. And so Yasmin asked, what do we need from everyone in this Zoom to help us create a CAP we can all be very proud of? And I think one of the biggest things that I would like is the continued engagement from everyone to help support, make sure that this plan meets the needs of our communities, but then to help us continue to promote. And so we want you to help us talk about climate change and talk about the benefits of climate action with your friends, your neighbors, your communities, and help us support implementation. Keep in touch with us. And so I'm going to shift here to our last slide and say thank you all so much for participating. This QR code here on the screen, as well as visiting our engagement website, which is at alleghenycounty.us, climate action plan. Here you can continue to provide feedback, especially if you didn't have time to think through your answers for the questions tonight. The same questions are available on the website for you to provide that feedback there. Share it out with all your friends and your neighbors and your community and help us continue to get that feedback to make sure, again, that this plan meets the needs of our communities, helps prioritize what we know is important, and helps us actually see great climate action across Allegheny County. So thank you all again. We really do appreciate it. I know there were lots of questions. We will work on trying to pull as many of these together and provide answers. This Zoom webinar recording will be posted on the website along with the PowerPoint slides. Just give us a week or so to make sure we pull everything together and it'll be there for you all. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen, say thank you all, and let you all get back to your evening. I hope you all have a wonderful night. All right.